Succession is one of the best shows of all time. After a little over a year of watching Succession on and off, I finally finished watching all 3 seasons just in time for season 4, and it is honestly generational television. Now there's a lot to say about the show, but this video won't be an in-depth breakdown or analysis of characters and stories, but rather just my general opinions of the show prior to season 4. Now the 3 things I'll be covering in this video are first, the characters, secondly, the storytelling, and third, that finale. The finale I'm referring to is that season 3 finale, which is arguably one of the best episodes of television ever made.
Okay, we gotta get you, come on.
It's fucking lonely.
Hey.
I'm all apart.
Before we get into it, I'll be covering all things Succession Season 4 this spring when it comes out. So if you guys want more of my thoughts, make sure to subscribe and notification on so you don't miss any time I upload a new video or go live. But don't waste any more time, let's get into it. I want to give you guys a heads up. This video will be containing spoilers for pretty much all of seasons 1 through 3 of Succession. So if you haven't already seen Succession, like this video and come back to it later. If you don't want to check out Succession, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. But starting out this video, I want to talk about the characters. Logan, Kendall, Roman, Connor, Shiv, Tom, Cousin Greg, Jerry, and literally any other character with even a minor role in this show make it exactly what it is. I think what's so amazing about Succession is the fact that it is just such a basic concept and a show that I feel like many people wouldn't really be interested in if it wasn't for these super weird and rude and mean and honestly assholes of characters. These characters make this show what it really is. And as someone who's not really a fan of like super long TV episodes, and I'll talk more about this in the storytelling section, these are 1 hour episodes. What are there, like 28, 29 episodes in the entirety of seasons 1 through 3? And these characters make the time go by so fast and instantly make me want to click that play next episode button on HBO Max. I mean, these characters are so enthralling, engaging, and they create such a weird atmosphere for someone like me that obviously isn't in the higher power tier of whatever these characters are in, so engaged in what they're doing all the time. I think what's so unique about Succession and their characters is the fact that yeah, they are super distant from us, but they all have these qualities that make you be like, okay, like I relate to this character in this way and another character in this way. And so maybe if they're just a little bit nicer, you know, I'll completely side with them or something like that. And I think the biggest example of that is Cousin Greg. I mean, in the beginning, our literal introduction to him is throwing up out of a mascot mask. I mean, his character is the most down-to-earth one, but as you go through the season, you see he's just like the rest of the Roy family, where he stabs people in their back, he goes behind people's backs, and he does nasty, dirty things. He's literally suing Greenpeace, which is a fundraiser charity, because his grandpa wouldn't give him inheritance. I think what's so interesting about the characters and the way that they write this show is the fact that it feels very massive, and for good reason, because the people working on this show, a lot of them also worked on Game of Thrones. And my friend made this connection, which is really a great connection in my opinion, which is that the Succession feels like Game of Thrones, but instead of dragons and fantasy worlds, it feels like our own world, but an elevated version of that, with all of these characters fighting for power, who's going to be the next successor, pleasing their dad. I mean, it's just so cool to see all of this come together, and also all of it fall apart in some moments. I mean, all of season 2 is them fighting obviously issues with the crews, Kendall having his own inner issues, and all of these characters going through massive changes in their lives, and they can't really trust one another about it. They can't go to a family member and be like, hey, I trust you enough, and like, can I open up to you about this? And we don't really get that until the end of season 3, where Kendall finally opens up to his own siblings about something that's been bothering him for so long and basically eating him alive inside. And so I think it's really interesting the way that this show plays out the characters. And one big character I want to talk about is obviously Logan, who is the big character in the show. Obviously, he's the father, the leader of this business empire. And what I find so interesting about his character, and especially after watching season 3, is that he just doesn't lose. Even though I know he doesn't lose, I feel like he's gonna lose, and he doesn't, and it's still a surprise to me. I genuinely thought the end of season 3 was just going to end with the kids taking over, and then next season obviously they figure out who's going to be in power and stuff like that, and Logan is coming for the title once again. But obviously I was completely wrong. They went in a completely different direction, technically a full 180 from my thoughts, and it works completely, and I just didn't see it coming, because I think with Logan losing also comes a tone shift in the entire show. But the fact that they can ride that line between tone switch and keeping it not boring at all whatsoever, it's a very fine line, and they seem to somehow ride it throughout the entirety of the show. And nothing but respect to these writers, because it always feels like we're teetering on this line of the show could completely flip in a second, a split-second decision, and we could be watching what feels like a whole different show. And that's since season 1. I mean, just that the storyline with Kendall killing that kid, the waiter boy, and all of that kind of stuff, leading up to just random subplots thrown in there, like the threesome one that was on the boat whenever at the very end of season 2. Like, there's all of these small things that just throw ruts in different relationships and business things, and it's like they craft it so well. And I think that's just inherently saying that they craft these characters so perfectly, and Succession has been able to do such an amazing job with building up these characters and just giving us so much love and care for characters who are literally just assholes to everyone, but we still sympathize for them in moments, and creating these emotional like barriers inside these characters and letting us, the audience, seep through them and actually understand what they're going through. I think that's a very difficult thing to pull off, and this show does that absolutely perfectly. Now, the second thing I want to talk about in regards to Succession is the storytelling. With 29 one-hour episodes, Succession is filled to the brim with complex and layered stories that elevate the show above all others. And this, along with characters, are both super important, specifically in regards to keeping my attention, because like I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm not the biggest television fan. I just started watching a lot of TV very recently. I mean, all of 2022 is kind of like my rebirth into television and watching it a lot more consistently, watching newer shows. And out of all of the shows, I definitely felt like I took the most time between watching Succession, but it's just because it was so big and so grand. But what I noticed was once you start to get enthralled into the story near the end of the seasons, you quite literally cannot stop watching. It definitely takes me a little bit to get into the groove of watching the show in the earlier portion of the seasons, and it's definitely my fault. I mean, I have so many other things that I'm watching, and a lot of my friends that watch the show, they binge it, they watch it a lot at once, and I do that towards the end of the season, but I'm watching so many new movies and a bunch of other shows that are currently going on, and so I have a very difficult time binging shows. And so though it took me a while to get through Succession, I can say the storytelling is near perfect. I definitely think season 1 is the worst season in terms of storytelling, but it's also setting the exact foundation for what we need to make season 2 better than season 1, and then season 2 sets the foundation for season 3 to be a million times better than anything we got before. I also did mention this a little bit earlier, but I love how they just throw in literally the smallest stuff into this show, and it elevates it so much more than you would think. I mean, just looking back on the show now, the day I'm recording this video, my friend actually finished watching season 2, and he was watching the season 2 finale, and I was just peering over his shoulder to see whenever he got to the very end, whenever Kendall obviously outs his own family. But in that episode, we do have that like threesome plot with Shiv, Tom, and then the other lady that works on the boat. And also there's a conversation between Tom and Shiv about them having an open marriage and her asking about it on their wedding night and stuff like that. And now looking back at season 3, obviously we know how season 3 comes to a close and how it leads into season 4 and stuff like that. And so we know that Tom has always been frustrated in this marriage, and we understand that Tom's always been frustrated with the story of Shiv and his relationship and how all of this has been evolving. In season 3 especially, Tom is definitely like the MVP of the season. If anything, Tom is really the MVP of the whole show. I think that's a discussion for a different day, and we'll see what season 4 kind of crafts up for Tom's character. But I have no doubt that it's going to be amazing, because you see these small ruts thrown inside of their relationship in the beginning of the seasons, and you see how that plays out, and eventually it leads Tom to his breaking point, which was outing Logan Roy's own children on him and turning him against him, and outing his own wife and turning Logan against his own kid. Additionally, I think what's super unique about Succession is the fact that it does so much in such a like small amount of time, even though it's such a long amount of time. Okay, I don't know really how to explain it, but hear me out, right? You have 29 episodes. Each of them are over an hour. They're like an hour 13 if I'm not mistaken, right? And at least for season 1, this is kind of where it was proven to me first, which is in season 1, in the first episode, Logan is sick. Episode 2, they're in the hospital, right? I'm thinking as a noob to the Succession world, okay, Logan's gonna die and they're finding a successor. That's what Succession is about. Logan's dying in the first like 3-4 episodes, right? Episode 3, he's chilling and he's going strong until season 3. I mean, this show packs so much and it makes you feel like, oh my god, it's gonna take them 5 episodes to resolve this. Boom, they do it in 2. It's the same thing over and over and over, and I never get tired of it. I think also another big example of this is in season 3. Well, technically, very end of season 2, which is the whole big thing is about the shareholder meeting and who's gonna take blame for all of the crew's stuff. And they end up pushing the shareholder meeting until I think it's like midway through season 3 when they start talking about it at the end of season 2. So you have like 6 to 7 hours of content in between the first mention of like, okay, we're having the shareholder meeting and when it actually happens. And that's something I absolutely love about Succession storytelling, is the fact that they fill it so much with complex and layered storylines that you don't mind that there's 7 full hours of content between the first mention and when the action is actually done. And I think that's only something a show like Succession can pull off. I'm assuming maybe Game of Thrones did a pretty similar thing, but I haven't seen Game of Thrones personally, so I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below, because I think a Succession and Game of Thrones comparison is very, very cool, at least from just the outer perspective view of it. And so I just think that thinking of it in that lens, you have such a grand and high and pretty fantastical thing for at least us in this real world watching the show of what is Succession, like having their own personal drivers, flying in helicopters to go across the city. Like they're so unbelievably rich, where it's like, first of all, I want to be like this person. I want to be rich. I want to have, okay, I don't want to be like this person. I want to live this life. But then you're like, okay, do I really want to have this life? Like, do I really want to live like this in this way? And the answer to that, at least in my opinion, is 100% no, because they all look absolutely miserable on the inside. And that's part of the amazing story they tell in the show, is they make looking rich like so cool. Like it's actually really badass in my opinion, like the way they make it look. But additionally, it also looks like a living hell, what you had to put yourself through. You can't even trust your own siblings. And I think that's all perfectly portrayed through the storytelling. But with that being said, the third and final thing I want to talk about in this video is that finale. I think it's fair to say that the season 3 finale is one of the best episodes of TV ever, and it caps off an absurd buildup that really starts all the way from season 1.
Who has ever looked after you in this fucking family? Huh? Do you want a deal with the devil?
Oh. What am I gonna do with a soul anyways? Souls are boring. Boo, souls! Of course. Okay. All right.
I really don't know public perception of Succession. I mean, obviously I know people love the show, but I don't really know public perception in terms of what people think of individual episodes. For me personally, I watched the last 3 episodes of Succession in one night, 3 hours straight. It felt like an absolute movie. And ending it off on that note was so perfect. That frame of Tom and Shiv looking into the camera is absolutely beautiful. It's so perfect and it tells such a great story. And if you guys didn't know, that shot was actually improv. But yeah, I just think the way that the finale builds up is absolutely perfect. And like I said, it's really built up from season 1. It feels like a water balloon that's filled up so much and it finally is bursted, but you start to get these drips in the water balloon in season 1 with the whole Shiv and Tom marriage, and you see that dynamic and you see how that evolves throughout the entire show. You also see this relationship between Kendall and his dad, and also that whole confession scene that they have in that outdoor area right outside of the wedding where Kendall absolutely breaks down. That scene is one of the best scenes of television I've ever seen, and honestly, that finale includes 2 of my favorite scenes in TV or movie history. The one outside where Kendall confesses, and also just that final scene, the whole confronting Logan scene, and then Tom walking in. It's absolutely stunning stuff. I mean, it's also like cinematography, on a cinematography level. Like I didn't make a section on this video to talk about the technical aspect of the show, but I think it's just inherently known that this show is beautiful. I mean, it's shot so perfectly, and the finale does some really great things. I'm yet to watch too many videos on analyzing the finale and just the show in general, which I have a bunch on my watch list that I've had since I started watching season 1, but they all contain spoilers, so I couldn't watch them at that point. But I really think it's interesting, like, how Roman, his development throughout the entire show, and my bold prediction for the end of the show is that I think Roman will end up taking over Waystar or whatever, like the streaming service thing, whatever ends up happening. I think Roman will be in charge. But just seeing that ending was so heartbreaking, because we've seen Roman's development and he seemed like he was going in a better direction, obviously, and his character was honestly amazing in terms of just development, writing, storytelling, all that kind of stuff. But you just see that, like, that little death in his body movement and Kendall's body movement, where it's like Kendall kind of understands, like, he's been over a bunch of times by Logan. It's like he's had this happen in multiple times, so it's not anything new to him, right? But this is Roman's first time being actually, like, screwed in front of his dad. And I think it's so interesting the way that they play it out. Obviously you have the symbolism of the blocking in that shot, but I think it's just so cool the way that it all comes together in this finale. And I don't have much else to say without just blabbering to go on and on and on about the finale, but I just think every little aspect of this show is so well integrated with one another. But that leads me to my final remarks on Succession season 1 through 3, and I just think the show is absolutely amazing. I have 2 or 3 from my friends that watch it. They're still going through it. One of them binged it in like a week and a half, which is absolutely insane. But I know it took me a while to get through the show, and I think season 1, it just didn't really click with me, and I wasn't really invested in what was happening. But like midway through season 1, I just couldn't stop watching. Between seasons 1 and 2, I took a break because there's so much other stuff I had to watch. And same thing between seasons 2 and 3, but season 3 was definitely the fastest I'd watched the season, and for good reason. I mean, season 3 is just absolute peak television. It's one of my favorite seasons of television. If season 4 doesn't fumble the bag, which I don't think it will, because seasons 1 through 3, every season's just gotten better and better and better. If season 4 can somehow be even better than season 3, I do believe Succession will end up going down as one of my favorite shows of all time. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking when my favorite shows of all time ranking will come out. It's just hard to do that because a lot of my top shows right now aren't done yet, and it really matters how they wrap it up, or if they keep going, and if they end up going for way too long and stuff like that. So I want to wait until a lot of these shows are done, and so Succession is one of those, Barry is one of those, The Boys is one of those, but I think Succession has consistently gotten better and consistently evolves in terms of story. I know a lot of critics have an issue with like Kendall's story being too repetitive, and the whole like Logan, Waystar, Roy Clay stuff, like it's all like super meddled, and like it's just not very consistent in terms of like storytelling, and they feel like a bunch of random elements are in there. But at least for me and a lot of other people that watch the show that actually like it, that I talk to, they all love that stuff, and I love it too. And it's just like, yeah, I think people can frame it as it's just cheap storytelling, they're throwing stuff in there, but it's entertaining. And at the end of the day, like, that's what Succession has been. It's 29 episodes. Every episode is an hour long, and they're somehow keeping us entertained in what feels like this out-of-world family that shouldn't even exist. It's so crazy to think that this show exists and that there's so many people that watch it, because again, on paper, it doesn't seem like something that would be too entertaining. But guys, that's pretty much it on all of my thoughts on Successions 1 through 3. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, I'll be covering all of season 4 of Succession week to week on the channel. So if you guys want all of my thoughts on Succession and you don't want to miss out on any of that, make sure to follow me by hitting the subscribe button down below. And again, if you've seen Succession, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.